Hi, this is Jacob from the Cinema Goat, and I have just seen Spider-Man Brand New Day. It's an excellent Spider-Man film, it's a great MCU film, and putting superhero stuff aside, it's just a solid film. So, Spider-Man Brand New Day, new Spider-Man film. It was directed by Daniel Destin Cretton. He is mainly known for directing Shang-Chi several years ago. Shang-Chi was one of the best MCU films in post-Endgame era, and by one of the best, I probably mean one of the least worst films, because in overall they have been of very poor quality, but Shang-Chi was one of the few that I actually kind of enjoyed. In terms of where Brand New Day sits in the larger MCU franchise, it is now, and it is the last film in the franchise before the release of Avengers Doomsday, which I'm not excited about at all because I don't think it was earned the way Infinity War and Endgame were. Spider-Man Brand New Day has definitely been earned. So I mentioned where it sits in the MCU, but where it sits in Spider-Man universe or Spider-Man franchise is it's a follow-up to No Way Home. At the end of No Way Home, the whole world, including MJ and Ned, forgot who Peter Parker was. And in Brand New Day, obviously, Peter will have to deal with this new reality of his. And so naturally, the film stars the main trio, played by Tom Holland, Zendaya, and Jacob Batalon. But it also brings a lot of new and new old characters. And these are Punisher, played by Jon Bernthal. Mark Ruffalo comes back as Bruce Banner. We also have Michael Mando as Scorpio, who returns first time since, I believe, Spider-Man Homecoming, post-credit scene. Then we've got some newcomers, Trammell Tillman, who is fresh off Severance. He's great in that show. It's a great show as well. And I've been really excited to see him on the big screen. We've got Lisa Colon-Zayas, who is known from The Bear, and perhaps more importantly, Sadie Sink. Additionally, Michael Giacchino comes back to score the film, and as always, he does the great job. And so my overall impression of the film is that there's a lot of elements in this film, but unlike many other MCU films in recent years, squeezing all these elements in doesn't feel artificial or forced. It is all combined very well. And not only this film needs to sit in the larger MCU universe, which normally creates some constraints in the story, but it's also setting up certain future elements of the MCU. And these are the things that have been sort of ruining the MCU in the last several years. But in this film, all of these elements are combined mostly very efficiently and very organically. And additionally, this film felt much more like a Sony Spider-Man rather than the MCU Spider-Man, which is not a bad thing. The best part of this film are all the character moments. The chemistry of the cast is off the charts, especially the main trio, Peter, MJ, and Ned. Whenever these people interact on screen, the emotional weight of the film is just huge. And they do have this great natural chemistry between them, which is why they've worked so well over 4 films. But that chemistry also extends to pretty much the rest of the cast, and most of the interactions between different characters in this film are just working so well. There's a lot of emotional beats. Everything kind of makes sense. For example, the character played by Lisa Zayas, she plays a police captain or commissioner, and she sort of plays the role of Jim Gordon to Spider-Man because he needs someone like that at this stage. And what's been a regular feature in Tom Holland's Spider-Man films, he always had a mentor, starting with Tony Stark, Nick Fury, then a little bit of a Happy Hogan / Aunt May. And in this film, Frank, aka Punisher, they never actually mention the name Punisher in this film, which I think is great because it humanizes the character. And Frank fills up a lot of this father figure presence in Peter's life. And apparently, and their chemistry is great. They could easily have their own spin-off because the way they keep bouncing off the witty dialogue between themselves is just amazing. And these two guys, they just start in the Odyssey together, and apparently they're pretty close in real life, and you can just, this chemistry is just coming through and through all the time, and it's just great to watch. And then there's Mark Ruffalo, whose appearance at this stage of MCU is a bit weird because it's like, why is he in this place? But this is like phase 6 of MCUs or whatever. But it was great to see him. The way they incorporated him was pretty neat because he sort of makes his entry, serves his purpose and then exits. And all this not only serves as bringing Bruce Banner back into MCU, putting him on a little bit of an arc and then setting him up for the future, but also what he does makes sense in a way of propelling the story of Brand New Day. And there's a couple of really cool scenes with him. And so, yes, the emotional and character beats of the story of this film, which is 2.5 hours long, its biggest strength. And to be honest, if this film had even less action than it had, and more of that character, more of these character moments, I think the movie could have been even better. Because Spider-Man is one of the most popular comic book characters. He's always been one, and he's very endearing, sort of relatable. And Tom Holland really made him his own. I kind of have a soft spot for Tobey Maguire because that's the Spider-Man I was growing up with, and these are my favorite Spider-Mans. But in hindsight, I feel like Tom Holland has taken this character way further than Tobey Maguire ever did, and he really made him his own. In terms of other strengths, the overall story, it's pretty tight for such a long film. It could have been a little bit shorter, but I don't think it's a major issue here. There is a bunch of action sequences, as in fights, typical for MCU. I think they choreographed pretty well. Although I did find myself kind of dozing off on a couple of them because they were just going for too long. But again, that comes back to the fact that the biggest strength of this film is the characters. So the action sequences were kind of moving away from this. And they were just there out of necessity, really. And as I mentioned before, the music's great. This is Michael Giacchino. He's done Spider-Man before. The music's just great. It really reflects the evolution of Peter Parker / Spider-Man as a character, and it really reflects the places he's going to. I think visually the film looks great. There's a few really cool shots of Peter flying on his web. These were fun to watch, and it's just a great, really well-rounded film. The only kind of major issue I've had here is something that is typical for the MCU, and everyone knows it by now, and that is the villains. The villains were pretty weak. There's technically a few different villains in this film, although they are all kind of different and complicated. But the main bad guy is not only, it's obvious from the beginning, his character is not explored at all, and he's just a stand-in. He's completely inconsequential. He is utterly uninteresting. And what a waste of an actor as well. But the main big villain of the story, who is more of an anti-hero rather than a villain, is pretty good as a character, but not necessarily great as a villain. Really setting up something with this character, and it makes sense, and it also kind of fits in this specific Spider-Man story pretty well. But I'm not overly impressed with the villains in this film. And in terms of minor villains, Michael Mando, and this is not a spoiler, he plays Scorpio. He's probably the worst character in the film. He serves a certain practical purpose, but that could have been filled by anyone, and using him maybe just for the sake of the fact that they did set him up 10 years ago in a post-credit scene, it's just completely pointless. And the few scenes he's got, they were just really cringe. And these are my thoughts on Spider-Man Brand New Day. I will probably rewatch it at home, and this is something I do very rarely for MCU films. It's not quite as good as No Way Home, but it's pretty close. And it's definitely up there with the best Spider-Man films. And I like the fact that they took a few years to make this one. And I also like the fact that, at least officially, despite tremendous performance at the box office, they said that they have no plans of an imminent sequel, which means they will take their time, a few years, and then hopefully, I don't know, 5 years from now, we'll get another Spider-Man entry, which will be equally excellent, rather than just trying to bank on the momentum and just release the next Spider-Man ASAP. It really feels weird because MCU has been so bad over the last few years, and they've been trying a few different angles, and they just keep misfiring. But then they're able to release something like this, something like Spider-Man Brand New Day, and it's just awesome. And you just ask yourself, why can't you just do it with other films? And I've got absolutely no hope that Avenger Doomsday will be anything more than average. And I'm really glad that I think Tom Holland is not supposed to be in it at all, maybe just a cameo, because I think they're being somewhat extra protective over Spider-Man IP, which is a good thing because, again, Spider-Man is one of the most popular superheroes, and that's not just Marvel, just across the board. And I really feel like they should treat it with more respect than they do some of these other characters. So in overall, I'm really hopeful for the future of Spider-Man franchise, regardless of where it is in relation to MCU. And this is my review of Brand New Day. Let me know in the comments below if you also enjoyed the emotional beats of the story. And if you like this kind of content, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more content like this to follow. And in the meantime, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.